We've seen a lot of change already in the 20 plus years. We started with paper, then we went through this whole era of digitization, which, even to Krista's point, and met with resistance even when EHRs came out first. I mean, I'm aging myself by pointing to that time and era where doctors just did not want an EHR. And it's only economic incentives that kind of sped up the adoption sort of itself. And then we started, getting into the realm of automating tasks, sort of the basic tenet of like, okay, if we as humans, we've been doing this, but can this be done without the same level of effort that humans involve? So I kind of go back to, before NextServices in the consulting world, there's a couple of economic models that drive everything. And the one that always stuck out to me was time and material, right? That there's time and there's material. Now, what is material? Material would typically be systems, people, resources, and then there's time. Those are the two things that generally cost every organization, whatever they need to do to process and to throw an output. And you try to save time and you use as less material or resources as possible. And that's the transformation we have had and seen along the way, even until now. Every time the economics would drive saying, hey, you just can't do it this slowly or take this long or not be as clear as we want you to be, whether it is data, clinical or business, such as claims and revenue cycle related data, et cetera. Even in the workflows of a typical GI practice. I mean, we've been in the trenches for a very long time, and I think at the very initial part, we were primarily focused on what we call claims management, just getting the claims out, getting them paid, and that was it. And slowly you begin to realize that everything is connected. And the effect of claims getting paid right, getting paid fast, has a lot to do with eligibility, has a lot to do with getting the authorizations right, has a lot to do with the clinician being in sync with everything that is going on. And that's when all the data that we're putting into the EHR is going to become useful. For us as a company too, we've had to go through that same transformation internally, because you can't lead the outside world when you are not as forward yourself. And so we've had to go through that process ourselves, saying, hey, everything that we're doing on behalf of GI practices and their organizations, how do we make that better? And, as technology provided more tools, adopting those tools and finding the best use and the most efficient use for it was where we used to focus a lot of our effort on. And now I think the world has gone to a point where, with the incidence of automations and the ability that AI can offer, we're speeding up. It's ratcheting up really fast. I used to always point you talk about Moore's law, and I point out the graphs. We as humans, we've been used to the graph going like this for a while now, especially in healthcare. Adoption is slow. Convincing people is very hard. Fear is another reason why we're always very skeptical in general. But now that is no more a choice. So many examples come to mind. Just, when I think about how I used to drive to clients, 15 years ago, printing out paper maps and finding landmarks so I can get there, versus now in literally 2 seconds, I'm just, having GPS just direct me everywhere. And when I take that example, I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if there's like a GPS in healthcare that just directs patients and providers and, administrators everywhere and handles, a lot of the simple stuff like the data, the roads, the closures, what's working, what's not working, how fast can you get there, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of things that Mike, Krista, and Aniket have already kind of talked about brings a lot of interesting questions to mind. We call it transformation, and that's sort of the word. And I think that's where a lot of the focus really is now. We've transformed from paper to digitization to automations, and now we're about to transform again, where we're using data, right? And for the longest time, we just collected data And the only thing technology did was display it to us. We got to use that information. We as humans still decided what to do with that information for the longest time. That is where the fundamental change is going to be. It's like, it's not just the humans that are going to decide what to do with the data. We're now going to have intelligence close enough to humans that will help us what to do with data, workflows, our jobs, and how we go about it. I know it seems like a lot to take, but that's the reality in front of us.